Professor Moore, Kate Moore, says that embryologic development, the way it's described in the Qur'an, was not known in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So it must have been divine. Well, not exactly. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm saying it's a bit naive. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Third chapter, third section, seeing the relevance of the Qur'an, the scientific relevance of the Qur'an. The example I want to go through today is a description of the embryonic development. And here, what comes to mind immediately is a comment from Professor Moore, Kate Moore, who says that embryologic development, the way it's described in the Qur'an, was not known in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And it corresponds, it's close enough to how we understand embryonic development today. So it must have been divine. Well, not exactly. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm saying it's a bit naive. It turns out that Kate Moore, may Allah reward him for the good intention he had. He was not a historian. He was a biologist. He didn't know what was known or not at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So maybe, yes, in Europe it was not known. But it turns out that the Greek knew about embryonic development. You have someone called Galen. That person, Galen, used to cut open animals, thousands of animals at different stages of pregnancy. When I imagine it, it's horrendous, but he did it. And through his dissections, through his studies, he was able to see the development, the embryonic development of animals. And he described them. He described them in 4 stages, really similar to the way the Qur'an describes them. So you could say, okay, maybe that knowledge then was known. It was not something new. It was known in Greece. Somehow it could have traveled through the Arabic Peninsula. Galen lived 400 years before the Prophet ﷺ. So you have 400 years for that knowledge to migrate from the Byzantine Empire through the Arabic Peninsula. It's possible. There's no proof, but it's possible. It's a possibility. But I would say that Galen didn't only talk about embryonic development. He talks about many other things, including the production of sperm. In that same volume called The Semine, Galen talks about the production of sperm at the origin of the embryo. And for him, he describes that production of sperm as taking place everywhere, not only in the testes, but in the whole body. He confused the lymphatic system with the reproductive. For him, he didn't see a distinction between the lymphatic system, which is also a whitish fluid, with the reproductive system. Today, we differentiate. They are not the same. But for him, he didn't see a difference. So for him, sperm was produced everywhere and then condensed within the testes. Today, we know it's wrong. But the beauty here, if one wants to accuse the Prophet ﷺ of just collecting knowledge, contemporary knowledge, then how was he able to pick up and preserve knowledge that is now verified and to dismiss knowledge that is now discredited? Subhanallah. So even though these 4 stages of embryonic development coincide with Galen's 4 stages of embryonic development, I still see miracles, because it's like if Allah picked and chose what would be confirmed later, Subhanallah. Again, to keep the Qur'an relevant across the ages. The Qur'an mentioned about the reproductive system and locates actually the reproductive system within the loins and not the whole body like Gallieni. And that for sure was not known at the time. But again, that's a subjective reading of the text. You can have different interpretation, but that's one of them. The language accepts that interpretation. And Gallieni continues and describes other things that are now refuted. And again, the beauty I see that none of the verses in the Qur'an echoes these refuted descriptions of Gallieni. It's like Allah knew what's true, what's not, and revealed in the Qur'an only what is true. So through that example, I wouldn't go so far as to say that the fact that you only describe these 4 embryonic stages and not the rest that Gallieni was wrong about is a proof that the Qur'an is true. Someone could easily say that the one who made up the Qur'an, a'udhu billah, was just lucky to pick the right descriptions. Well, in the fact that the Qur'an is silent and didn't even echo these wrong conceptions of embryology, I see a divine wisdom. Allah knew what was right, what was wrong. Allah knew what is true and what is not, and select only what is true for His revelation, for His final revelation. Subhanallah. وجزاك الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.